What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of The Meaning of Podcast. I am Ace.
This is RB3.
And this is the podcast where we talk about your favorite filmmakers and the deeper meaning within those films. In this episode, we're talking about the one and only Miss Ava DuVernay. We're going to be going through all her filmography. She has a new movie coming out in theaters right now. It's called A Wrinkle in Time. So we thought it was appropriate time to talk about Ava DuVernay. I'm excited about this episode. I know she's a director that I've respected for a long time. I'm going to talk about a specific movie that I feel that is just one of the GOATs of movies as far as like a really, truly amazing, underappreciated movie that should have gotten a lot more Oscar recognition, and it didn't. I'm pretty sure you guys can guess which movie I'm talking about, but we'll be talking about that all throughout this episode, as well as some other movies that she did. But before we do that, guys, we're going to go through your comments of last week's episode where we talked about the Oscars. We recapped the Oscars. If you missed that, go ahead and check that out. I know it's been a while since the Oscars have passed, but we talked about the political atmosphere. We talked about the winners, the losers, who was a rightful winner, who was a snub. It was actually a really fun podcast that we got to talk about all that, and that's why we want to read your comments from that episode, guys. Make sure you always leave us comments every week. It's the best way to connect with us. Yeah, guys, leave a comment, no matter what it is. If it's positive, negative, love, even if you're just going to comment on my shirt or RB3 shirt or my background, whatever it is, guys, just leave us a comment. It shows us the best form of love, and we need love in our lives right now. Right, RB3?
We need the love. And also, iTunes listeners, please tweet us. If you listen on iTunes, please tweet us. You will get a retweet. I know, at least from me. I probably won't reply any sort of way, but I will retweet it. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, it's funny because you retweet stuff and I reply. I'm that weird guy who replies to almost everyone. If I don't reply to you, I'm sorry. I really do try to reply to everyone.
It'd be tough, man, because you'd be trying to sit there crafting a tweet. You know?
It is tough because I'm not always on Twitter, and I mean I'm on Twitter quite a bit, but not always. So it's sometimes I miss it or I'm doing something else. But retweet us, Mr. iTunes listeners or Mrs. iTunes listeners. Let's read some comments from last week's episode, starting with Simon B.W. Khan, who says, RB3's face when Ace is talking about the subway scene is the best thing I've ever seen in my life. The subway scene in Darkest Hour, which is amazing. Oh, man, and it put a tear in my eye when Winston Churchill goes into the subway unannounced and loses his security guard and talks to the people of Britain with passion and with love, with tears in his eyes, talking about Hitler taking over the country and how evil and how horrible that would be, and how he will not give up, RB3. He will not give up.
I didn't know if you're trolling or not when you're
I'm not trolling. I actually like that scene. Dude, when I started watching that scene, trust me, I thought the same thing you did. I was like, man, this is some cheesy ass shit. And then the scene started to go on, and I was like, man, I'm inspired, bro. I'm inspired by this cheesy shit, man. It got me.
I didn't get any of it. I thought that shit was boring. I thought that scene was just like terrible. And I love how he kept calling on the black guy like every single time. And
I did notice
the
that.
one black dude just kept having his like smile like all the way to his ears all the time. Like, what's the Churchill? Like, what the fuck, man? That's crazy.
I did notice that. Yeah. Actually, that stood out quite a bit. Movie Man Naked Jesus, who constantly comments. Shout out to
Naked
you.
Jesus.
Gotta agree with RB3 on Moonlight is better than Get Out. Not even on the same level. Same with La La Land is better than Shape of Water. I agree with La La Land better than Shape of Water. I don't agree that Moonlight is better than Get Out.
Man. I think looking at it objectively, like when I'm talking about the pure art of filmmaking, from the style to the dialogue, the juxtaposition and relationship between characters. You mean the original through the form
screenplay winner dialogue that Get Out won?
Get Out's a great screenplay. It's a great screenplay. But I definitely think as a form, as a piece of film, I mean, isn't it just nice? I mean, just think from the opening scene, that whole like long tracking shot with the steady cam. We following Mahershala Ali's character doing the drug deals, talking to his boys.
Oh, that was a good shot.
And then it cuts immediately to like the shaky, violent, aggressive images of young Chiron running from the bullies. Kind of the juxtaposition from the easy life versus the oppression.
I can name like 5 of those and Get Out too.
Nah, man. Well, I could list 100 of those in Moonlight.
Yeah, but Moonlight is just it's like trying like really hard. They're like, please,
succeed.
notice us. Guy Cole, speaking of that same thing, says, another great episode. I'm with Ace on Get Out versus Moonlight. Moonlight is a fine but forgettable movie for me, while Get Out is revolutionary. And also, I'm with Ace on Blade Runner, which is a masterpiece of cinema work, visual art. Sorry, RB3.
Nah, that's crazy.
And visual art. He said Blade Runner. He didn't say 2049.
Yeah, okay, you're right. You're right about yes, Blade Runner. Yes.
But I think he meant 2049.
Nah. He meant Blade Runner.
All right.
A superior film.
Hey, man. Guy Cole, shout out to you for agreeing with me. It's so funny how everyone is like in this world. We're always like, yeah, you agree with me. I like him.
Yeah.
And when it's like someone disagrees with me, like, screw that guy. He disagrees with me.
Yeah.
I was thinking about that the other day because I was watching a political commentary show. I won't name which one it is, but let's just say it's super right wing. No, I'm kidding. But fine, it's Ben Shapiro. Fine.
Ben Shapiro. That's what you meant, Tom.
But I was listening to one, and it's crazy how someone was saying something, and he's like, "Yeah, they agree with me," and I'm like, "Is that all this is? Where just people agree with each other?" And then they're like, "I like that person because he agrees with me," versus this person who doesn't. I don't know. I got into a weird, and I'm going into like a freaking loophole right now, but whatever, I'll do it. I got into a weird deep thoughts yesterday, which is what I do. On
hashtag deep thoughts.
Deep thoughts, yeah.
Deep thoughts,
and I got into like thoughts of like my future and stuff, and thinking about relationships and stuff like that, and how like when people look for like a lifelong, like a wife or something, you know, they always look for someone who's like, I need a wife who does the same things I do, watches the same things I watch, dresses the same way I dress, agrees with everything I say, is the same way politically, religiously, what everything is like. They want you to line up, and it's crazy how like I'm kind of not for that. I kind of want a wife who like not necessarily disagrees with everything I do, but like challenges me. And like can debate me on intellectual conversations and political conversations, and has her own identity, and is not just a copy or just an agreement of what I am. It's as far as like, it's like, I think we should do this, honey. Well, I agree. Let's go back to the kitchen, honey. And it's like, I don't want that necessarily, but so many dudes want that. They think that's like attractive, and I'm like, ugh, I hate that. Yeah. I hate that shit. Ugh. Hey, I don't know. This is weird. I'm going into a weird loophole.
No. Hey, man, post-woke ace right here, man. Let's go. Hashtag feminism, all that business. Nah, man. I mean, like, I agree. I definitely agree. You know, I think just I just like
people who challenge you.
Yeah. Just in general, I think the world needs a little challenging. You know, I mean, you shouldn't just have the answers. You should be questioned a little bit, pushed a little bit on your position, and then hopefully you can learn something from that. So I think it's particularly when talking about like politics too. I think if we held journalists more accountable, and if journalists held the government more accountable, like there has to be like checks and levels of accountability for them to be like a good system. And that right now there's kind of not, but hopefully we'll get to some place where
I think the biggest Jesus, here we go. As far as we're getting into this conversation, I think the biggest thing in this world, and I know this is such a cheesy thing to say, and it's such a theme that comes up in movies, it even comes up in a movie we're going to talk about, but I think the biggest thing in this world that is just truly, the more I'm here in LA and the more I learn about people, is balance. It's balance as far as keeping yourself centered in the sense of like not going too far in one direction or too much in another direction. Here we go again, but The Legend of Korra, which is an amazing animation, has a great, I know, it's right behind me. Korra's right behind me. Has a great first season, and there's an episode called When Extremes Meet, which talks about how one guy can use this kind of crazy anti-government, anti-establishment movement, and then it's countered with an overpowering fascist, all government, all right hand, iron fist kind of movement. And there always, when one kind of evil rises, another one rises to meet it. Instead of good rising to meet it, or a balance rising to meet it, there seems to be an extremism. As the country in the U.S. turns more and more towards, you know, what's currently in the White House, instead of trying to find our similarities and try to battle the extremities and the evil that is in the extreme right or the extreme left, we just lean towards the extreme left, and we're just like, well, we got to go to extreme left because the extreme right's much worse. And it's like, there's never a balance that we find ourselves in, because we're all obsessed with trying to counteract the other scale, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I feel you on that, but I definitely think there needs to be a movement. I think that, that whole philosophy of like the Oriental line, of the how like where are placed on the Orient line in terms of like the right. So put my left hand up. The right or the left. Right now the country is definitely further on the right side. So I mean, at least in the White House, government representation wise. So I think movements on the left are left to counteract that, to create some sort of balance too, right? And I think that's definitely. I mean, listen, man. There's no. Everybody knows this. I'm probably more on the extreme left. You know what I mean? Like I'm probably more. I want to see.
I don't know, man. You've said a lot of nice things about Trump, bro.
Have I really?
I've read your Twitter, bro.
Really? Listen. I'm
just kidding, dude.
I want. I kind of want to have. I want to see a world where we can have a Bernie Sanders. In the Congress, debating or discussing with, maybe not Donald Trump because he's not that smart, but like a smart, like right wing kind of, and then we could
respected politician.
Yeah, respected politician, and we could have kind of discourse. And I think but I definitely think the butting of heads is necessary, because I think my biggest problem with a lot of politics is it is a lot of pandering. And I feel like sometimes with particularly with like the Democratic Party right now, it's a lot of, they're very compromising. You know what I mean? They're very like, meet me, I'll meet you in the middle. Whereas a lot of right wing kind of politicians are very gun hole on their position and never leaving that spot. So as a result, we end up getting like, at least the policies that we've seen rise up more and more as of recently, we're getting more of like their favorite. I mean, look at the tax bill, man. Like, was it like? I know what the heck are we talking about tax bills for? Is a movie podcast, but like it's like 75%.
I started this, man. I'm the one who started this.
75% of the benefits in that tax bill benefit the top 1%.
Yeah.
There's not really a representative government, so I think you should have. I think having a good discourse and having strong heads on both sides is kind of necessary for the balance, and it's necessary for coming up with resolutions. Because it's at the end of the day, to me, politics is like religion. At the end of the day, they're just saying the same shit. It's just it's how you interpret it. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Both Democrats and Republicans, the right and the left, we both everybody wants like American jobs. Everybody wants. Everybody wants financial stability. Is what we interpret as like the negative stuff in our society is where the difference lies, I think.
Sure.
So I don't know if that has anything to do with Miss Ava DuVernay or our last week's Oscar episode.
It sure doesn't.
But thanks for indulging people if you haven't left yet.
Yeah, sorry about that, guys. That's my fault. I always get sidetracked. Let's read two more. Andre, that last name. Constasescu, I just made it up, says, I love the thought-provoking discussion regarding race and politics by both of you. I love RB3's passionate discussion on politics and how joking to the low-hanging fruit doesn't help bring about change. And then Ace had his own mic drop moment when he discussed the state of Latinos in films and his frustration therein. Great discussion, and I love your insights. Keep up the great work. That's honestly one of my favorite comments that I've read, because they're kind of like talking about how, there's different parts of this conversation in a podcast that we can have, and it's all encompassing, and we're not just talking about one thing over and over again, and we can have different variety of conversations and things that are relevant within the film community, like politics and Oscars, because that's a very political thing. The Oscars are a political thing. They always have been. So thank you for that comment. I appreciate it. I don't know if you have
thank you. I'm glad you're agreeing with me with the long-hanging fruit. I definitely think that there's a big problem, and I hope that next year's Oscars we get better at.
Yeah, we'll see.
Not letting Trump ruin our entertainment. That's my biggest problem, man. It's like everything. It's like everything. It gets worse and worse. Like the more we keep talking about, like Eminem's last album, you hear that shit, Revival?
No, I didn't hear
garbage. All he was doing is dissing Trump up and down. Like, dude, actually rap about something. Or what's Mr. Robot? I love season 3 of Mr. Robot.
I didn't see season 3.
Yeah, you checked out the season 2.
I did. I kind of did.
Hey man, look up this video essay. This is a video essay called Mr. Robot: Why the Plot Doesn't Matter. I agree with everything that was said in that video.
Who did it?
I can't remember who did it.
Come on,
it was like through a playlist.
You got to give somebody a shout out, bro.
But no, I got to. But check out but to me, that's why it's like I love season 3, but the biggest part of it was like, oh, Trump is really behind. We got to hack the government, and Trump is secretly behind. We have to China's backing this candidate. It's like, oh, what do we? It's this fear-mongering stuff in the Oscars. Every movie. Although I did appreciate Black Panther addressing it in like kind of a subtle way. That's
so different.
Even still, it was
it's so different to be like to address something in Black Panther versus being like, hey, Trump sucks. And it's like, well, that's different.
Yeah,
it's totally different.
It's the cheesiest scenes in Mr. Robot. Like, they'll literally show, like, news footage of, like, Trump speaking. Like, and then, like, you remember at the end of season 2, like, the big China, he's like, I want him to be the president. And then, like, it's like, what? That's crazy.
Oh, my God. One more real quick. Y2K says, you need to change this to the Ace and RB3 podcast and put your faces front and center in the thumbnail. Sell the podcast by your personalities. It's what makes it different. Nah. I mean, sure, but I don't know, man. I don't think we're speaking for myself. I'm speaking for myself, but again, I can put us together as a podcast since we are, a unit as a podcast. But I don't think we're there yet as personalities. I don't think we're Chris Stuckmans. I don't think we're Jeremy Johns or Schmoes or Christian and Mark. They have earned, selling themselves and making their own podcast. But for me, it's like, if we're going to talk about something, let's talk about something we're passionate about, and that's film. Instead of just talking about random topics. That's cool for personalities like Christian and Mark and other people that talk about that. But for me, it's like, I don't consider myself a personality. I consider myself a fan of film, a passionate. If anything, I consider myself more of a film critic than a personality. But I just feel like focus should be on film and not necessarily on, hey, what'd you do today, RB3? Like, no one cares. Like, let's just talk about like directors and badass people in film today. I don't know. That's just my opinion. I don't know if you got a different one, because if you do, that's cool.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
RB3 is like, damn it, I'm gonna kill you, Ace. After the cameras go off, I'm about to take you out, bruh.
Ace, you're fucking wrong. No, I'm kidding. No, I mean, I don't know. I don't know what. I mean, I guess he's.
I think that's what he's trying to say,
right?
Saying,
yeah, I mean, like, yeah, I mean, that makes,
take off the meaning of and just be Ace and RB3 and just talk about whatever. I guess maybe I don't know. I just don't see that as like our thing. I don't know. That's just me, because for me, it's like I just want to talk about film. I don't want to talk about. I'm not a personality, I guess, is what I'm saying. Well,
maybe one day we'll have.
Sure.
We'll have that RB3 or Ace and RB3
Absolutely.
show.
That's something that I'm never gonna say. I'm never gonna say never as far as like one day. Of course, one day. That would be great. I can.
Us kicking back.
Yeah.
Watching whatever.
Or talking about whatever. Sure. I'll go into a deep conversation about water and water drinking habits, and you guys will tune in every week because you're here for the personality.
But do you think we're great personalities, ladies and gentlemen? Please comment down below. Let us know.
Or if you do think we're great personalities, support us, guys. I mean, share or comment or, tweet at people you like and tell them about the podcast or tell them about us, or I don't know, give us a holler, man. I mean, we out here, bro. We out here in LA, bro. We struggling.
No.
We struggling. Or at least, RB3 is kicking ass in USC. I'm just getting my ass kicked. So I'm out here, man. This background's the best thing I got, guys. So give me some help, man. This took time, bro.
Nah, it's a great background though, man. I will say I did have a very nice conversation with Kristen Smith, regular viewer of this show.
Nice.
Salute to her, and she was just kind of saying like, I mean, I'm very proud of our audience that we have here. We have a very loyal audience, but it's kind of weird that we're not. I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't. Maybe it's
no. Speak your mind, bro. Speak your mind, brother, because I might back you up.
Like we bring a different perspective, I think, than a lot of other people would to some of our movie opinions. And we're young. We are speaking the woke shit.
Well, let me do it. Let me do it, man. I'm about to spit right now. Let me spit.
It's like
RB3 is like, calm your titties, Ace.
And let me drop a beat real quick.
No, for real though. Like, man. I mean, we're surrounded in a movie atmosphere, online internet world where people are talking about the same thing over and over again and agreeing with themselves over and over again. And it's the same type of people, same type of personalities. At least RB3 and I bring some sort of different perspective from a different atmosphere, from a different background, from a different upbringing, and with the same amount of knowledge, if not more knowledge. Speaking of us kicking people's ass in the Oscar pool and shit, but like, if not more knowledge than some people who've been in this business for a while. I'm just saying, man, like sometimes, man, we need to support different voices in this little community that we've built for ourselves. That's all.
No,
there's my 3 cents.
Yeah.
So,
well, just for, yeah, I didn't get invited to any Oscar polls. So.
Hey, man, neither did I. Neither did I. I'm just saying, by proximity effect, I'm assuming we kicked people's asses.
We looked at everybody's like Twitter posts.
We looked at everyone else's on Twitter, and we beat everyone on Twitter. So let's get into Ava DuVernay, guys.
Yeah, 20 minutes. 20 minutes.
No, it's not 20 minutes, guys. It's 10 minutes. 10. Let's get into Ava. She's it's crazy how much, like, I like starting from not from the beginning necessarily, but from the current. And currently, as far as like truly speaking of personalities, Ava is one of the most beloved filmmakers working in Hollywood today. Yeah. People love Ava DuVernay, like as a person, like as a like figure, as a representative of communities, as a representative of different voices, or giving different voices opportunities to be expressed. Yeah. Ava is known for bringing that out in people and bringing that out in film and being active, whether it be on social media or with, you know, her production companies or interviews.
She was in Girl Trip too.
There you go. Yeah. Stuff like that is like, Ava has become more than just a film director. And there's times when certain film directors become bigger than the films you're making. And Ava is one of those people, not necessarily on a huge scale like Steven Spielberg, but on a much bigger scale than before, because she really just blew up and became a voice for a lot of people, man. A lot of people that have been talking about a lot of stuff of diversity, of opinion, of expression being, you know, highlighted and being brought out into the spotlight by Ava DuVernay. You know, I mean, she obviously promoted the crap out of Black Panther. And she was actually one who was on Black Panther before Ryan Coogler was. Even if she, you know, backed out for creative differences, whatever it may be, she gave Ryan Coogler all the help, and she's friends with Ryan Coogler, and she's just really a personality that she's the type of director that people will go out to see a movie just to support her.
Well, you know, she's good friends with everybody in this industry. She was a publicist for a long time. She even worked on films like Spider-Man 2, a lot of big budget stuff. And then, you know, and her relationships with people getting to know her as a filmmaker became even more powerful. I mean, she's good friends with JJ. Like, JJ even approached her with the script for The Force Awakens and like asked her, asked for opinions.
Right, I did hear about that. Yeah.
So, you know, and she's had her hand in a lot of different, the Cloverfield Paradox, unfortunately not a good movie, but, you know, she helped, you know, she knew about that. She promoted that. A lot of good stuff that went behind, that she's behind. I think the what makes it even better is that her actions speak louder than the words. As a filmmaker, she's always putting African American females at the forefront, whether they're the stars or whether they're supporting characters, but it's always a prominent perspective in her films that we don't see in a lot of other filmmakers. And because frankly, you know, from point of perspective, you know, a lot of times it's harder for writers and directors to, I guess, see how they can write and interpret, you know, people who, you know, do not look like them, do not have the same kind of lifestyle. But Ava brings that perspective to like all of her characters, whether we're talking about, you know, her films or her television work, or even her. I mean, she's done a lot of other, like I said, for TV. Also, she directed a music video recently for the Jay-Z and Beyonce, and very unique perspective brought to that too. So again, that's very much, I think, a part of what makes her, like kind of put her in like a legendary status almost, just for having such few films, because it's a very distinct voice, very distinct perspective, and adding something to the conversation that was not there before.
That's great, man. Yeah, she's the type of person who puts her money where her mouth is, right?
Yeah.
To actually hire, female talent, African American talent, diverse opinions, diverse perspectives.
Even on her show Queen Sugar, which we could talk about briefly, I guess, when we get around to that time, because I'm a big fan of that show. But every episode of that show is directed by a woman. Wow. So she's definitely putting the biggest foot forward and supporting women filmmakers, women directors, and just the crew that she always has behind her. Her crew is always very diverse. I remember her talking about feeling the need to have like multiculturalism, from the makeup people to the grips to the gaffers to the cinematography, all the big teams, having a different, because it I think ultimately brings like a more positive environment, a more unique environment, and I think her films demonstrate. I always feel like the movies always live of what was on the set when they were filming it, and her movies always have a very kind of nice, calm, but like happy, more upbeat. I mean, you could definitely tell with some movies, like when there's a troubled production, like no doubt. You look at something like Apocalypse Now, came out in 1979. I think they shot it in 1976. But they shot for like 3 years, or 2 years or something like that. It was over budget, overblown. And you could tell that. I think that's what makes that movie so great, is you could tell like the anger, the frustration behind the camera. And I think with Ava's films, her positivity behind the camera leaks forward into the characters, into the story, into the optimism that's being presented. And I remember her. I believe a Twitter user, I can't remember exactly a Twitter user's name, but like had posted a email that she had received from Ava from like in 2012, talking about her tips for directing, talking about tips for directing her first feature. And Ava just said, like, always be positive to the crew. They're your family. They're the people you're living with. And I think that's very important too. As a film major myself, who works on a lot of different sets, I could tell you, like, some of these sets, hard ass people, it's not fun to be around. But I'm always happy that when I hear good stories about, even a lot of people that we cover on this show are very difficult to work with.
Yeah.
And I think that's what makes a lot of people, geniuses. But I definitely think this is what brings on.
That's such a great point. Directors are kind of known for being kind of assholes, kind of dicks, kind of like really abrasive, big personalities. And Ava is one of those people who you can kind of tell she's a truly sincere, nice, loving person. And that's so weird as far as like a filmmaker, right? Because like you said, a lot of the geniuses that we regard as being genius filmmakers are kind of controlling monsters as far as like on set, right? Because you've been on set, I've been on set. When you're on set, it's like everyone's at 100. Like the notch is like at 100. Everyone's going as fast as they can, as opinionated as they can, as like direct as they can, and the director is literally leading the ship. Everything he says goes. He debates, he fights, he screams. Like, this is what Hollywood essentially is, right? And I thought it was kind of just like exaggerated in the movies and stuff until I went on set for my first time when I was out in LA, and I was like, oh no, this is real. Right. Directors really are like super abrasive and super, kind of rude. And Ava seems to be the type of person you root for, because she's one of those few directors who are truly kind-hearted people and truly loving people. And I'm not saying she probably doesn't get angry on set. She probably does, but you can tell that she comes from a place of just true kindness and true sincerity in all her films. And I've seen, enough behind the scenes stuff of her to see that she just has a very big spirit, a kind spirit that she brings in all her films.
Yeah. So I think that's important. I think it's also needs to be said how much a director caring for their characters and loving their characters as much as she does is also important too, because all of her characters are so finely detailed, have very nuanced ways in looking at life. I mean, I was just, we're going to talk about Wrinkle in Time later, but I was just watching that earlier today, and I'm like, wow, this is a movie that, for a kids movie, surprisingly gets at a lot of nuanced ideas about children that I think only, a lot of people wouldn't get. But because she has so much love for her characters and put so much thought behind them. There's like a nice like understanding of what motivates this person, how consistent is this personality, and how as a film we're not going to judge our characters based on their flaws and of their, you know what I mean, like particularly when we talk about Selma, that's a movie that is about a hero, about one of our great American figures, but also highlights the flaws of this person, but not in a disparaging way, in a way that is honest and that's humble and that, you know, and is sincere, but that needed to be addressed too. So I think that's massively important for a lot of directors, or a lot of films, to have characters that don't feel like they are fighting or are hated by our writers and directors. So
yeah,
it's
absolutely.
Yeah.
Let's jump into her first few features. I know she did a documentary called "This Is the Life." To be honest, I haven't seen it. I don't know if you've heard about this one, RB3, but apparently it's like a kind of like a hip hop documentary, mainly about. It says alternative music movement they developed and the worldwide influence on the art form. And then the title says a must-see for hip-hop fans. Unfortunately, I didn't see this one. It's a documentary that was featured in, it looks like a few festivals. But yeah, I don't know. Have you heard about this one, RB3?
I have not. No, this is my first time.
It says how the West was won.
West Coast.
So it's kind of interesting. I definitely want to check it out.
Ava DuVernay from Compton, by the way, my hometown, my city. Salute to her for always being very generous and representing our wonderful town. And you know, she had a big screening of A Wrinkle in Time, the first public screening for the kids in the city of Compton. So salute to her for that. Yeah, you know, Compton is where I'm from, of course, and it's very important.
She has a short called Compton in C minor. Also haven't seen that one. Obviously, we usually don't cover shorts.
Yeah.
But again, it kind of shows that her heart is where she's from.
Right.
Similar to Ryan Coogler with Oakland. You know, everything, you know, Ryan Coogler does is very Oakland based because he's from Oakland. And at the end of the day, the biggest representative of what you can put on film is where you're from.
Right,
like if I'm from New York, like Spike Lee, then I'll put New York up on the map and on the forefront. You can feel the authenticity of someone from New York, like a Spike Lee. Or if I'm from Oakland with Coogler, or vice versa, Compton with Ava DuVernay, you know, that's the first thing you can self-identify in a film, is put yourself in the film in a version of the location of a film. Mm-hmm. So that's really cool. She also puts 2 love stories that she made, and I guess they're love stories. The first one is called I Will Follow. The second one is Middle of Nowhere. Now, I know you haven't seen I Will Follow, but you've seen Middle of Nowhere, right?
Yeah, Middle of Nowhere is definitely the big breakout. To me, I honestly, I didn't know about these other features, to be honest. I thought Middle of Nowhere was her first picture. But yeah, Middle of Nowhere is definitely the one that put her on the radar and won a bunch of Sundance Awards. I remember we used to play on, when it, you know, started coming out on home video, they played it on BET. Quite a few times. It's how, you know, it's actually, Middle of Nowhere is actually one of my mom's favorite movies. Basically, it's about a woman who is married to somebody who is incarcerated, and and she starts to form a relationship with a bus driver played by David Oyelowo. You know, while her man is in prison, there's some revelations. It's a pretty intense. It's pretty much like an intense, like melodramatic story, and it's a really powerful thing. It's a powerful statement piece talking about the effects of incarceration, the effects of the family. What does it mean to support somebody and be married to somebody and have a daughter with somebody who is not there? I don't think there's a daughter involved actually, but there is a mother, and the mother, she, you know, the main character, she lives with her mother while her husband's locked up, and she is also, you know, she's kind of giving guidance, like giving a sense of perspective to like why, like asking why are you married to this man who's not getting out anytime soon. And it's pretty. I mean, it's a pretty great movie, man. I definitely think Did you check out?
I did. Yeah, I've seen this one. It's just been a minute since I've seen it because I remember watching it a while back and remembering that this was the director of Selma, because that's kind of how I got into this one.
Right.
Was because I was like, oh, from the director of Selma. Cool, I'll check it out. So I've seen this one recently. I just don't remember every beat to it. I just remember, like you said, the fact of incarceration and David Oyelowo as well. This to me is what kind of kickstarted the. I don't want to say intimate because that's a strong word, but the chemistry between David Oyelowo and Ava DuVernay, as far as getting that director-actor relationship where you can get tremendous performances from people when you have a very close connection to the director. And like we've said many times on this podcast, that is truly about directors, that the biggest testament to a success of a director isn't the visuals or any of that, but it's the performances of your actors. That is the number one job of a director. And that is a huge testament to Ava, with this film specifically being her breakout film because of the tremendous acting in this movie, specifically from David, but everyone does a great performance.
Yeah,
in this.
who's the main character? Who plays the main character?
The girl?
Yeah.
Her name is Emma Yatsi Coronality.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with her. I recognize her face from this movie, but
right.
Obviously, this guy, Mariah Hardwick, is from her first movie, which is I Will Follow.
Okay.
I saw part of this movie because I didn't get the chance to finish it. But essentially, it also stars an African American lead, and it's basically about like a woman who's kind of grieving and going through stuff, and she kind of runs into people throughout her day, kind of giving her pieces of advice and kind of telling her what to do during the situation. It's an interesting movie. It shows once again Ava's attention to detail and Ava's ability to work with actors and to work with a tiny budget, because it's a super small budget movie, and still make the best of it and still squeeze out the best of the production design or the production or the actors or the time or whatever the technical aspect may be. And she works with everything and every little detail that she has. That's what stood out to me the most about this movie. And obviously the same actor who's in Middle of Nowhere. But yeah, let's talk a little bit more about Middle of Nowhere, as far as, because this is a theme that she will take on.
Yeah, in like a full-blown documentary.
In a full-blown documentary in 13.
I think even
so
addressing
it's
some of that in Selma too.
In Selma as well, absolutely. Yeah. But this is something that she's very passionate about, obviously, as far as incarceration and the prison system in general. What do you think that this movie specifically shows you on a personal level, as far as what that is to be in a relationship with someone who's in jail? I mean, that's crazy, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's like a broken cycle, you know what I mean? It's like you want to love the person that's locked up inside, but you don't have, you're not around that person. And it even starts with, they have those like great flash sequences where she imagines, she's like dreaming that she's lying in bed with her husband, but nobody's actually there. It really takes a strain on people, man. And, it's a real problem in our system that we get involved in, having, like this repurposed, kind of, slavery pretty much, in the way that, people are kind of locked up, put in pens, subjected to horrible conditions, on the fact that, I mean, I can't remember exactly what the charges were, in this film, but like a lot of times with a lot of people in America, and this is touched on in 13th as well, just, the petty crimes that people get locked up over, drug charges, whatever. It's just a new, it's not a new thing. It's definitely something that's existed in America for a long time, but it's just, it's a repackaging of previous sins of our country. And I think that this shows you like the personal and emotional strain that it has on the person. And in particular how, there's those scenes where he's trying to get parole, and he's trying to, negotiate for that. He has a wife and everything. And it's just, and it show, but then this also comes to the revelation that he also cheated on her while he was in jail too, because, I mean, I'm not going to justify cheating anyway. There's no need to justify that. But like, being locked up in there for that amount of time, he's not fully there himself. as a man, as a person, because the prison system just breaks you down and breaks you down. And it just shows on a personal level how that affects her, how that affects him, and how the troubles of the way our system works is greater than just some statistics and numbers.
Yeah, because it's more of a psychological strain on a relationship and on a family, right? Because the thing is, when you're in prison and you have a family, which a lot of people in prison have families, whether that be a wife or whether that be a wife and kids or whether that be a mother or whether that be whatever, a sister or brother, most people in prison have, full-time families that they want to support and that they want to be there for. And unfortunately, when they're in prison, it's kind of like a ticking time bomb of their relationship.
Right.
It's kind of the never-ending bullet that you're just not going to overcome because it's destined to fail. Being stuck in one location for that much time and being, treated like an animal and being separated for that long of a time takes a psychological strain, not just on the individual, but on the relationship itself, because a relationship is between two people, and it's incredibly important to keep that going and to keep communication, dialogue, expression between each other, and the fact that most people who are in prison have families. It's it's over. Once you have a family member in prison, it's over, and that's devastating because it's almost like the incarceration system is more than just breaking people down or separating people, but it's almost creating a systematic way of separating families.
Yeah, and that goes to speak into a larger point, and the way our country's running now. I mean, you look at other programs, not necessarily prison, but stuff like ICE, right? That's all dedicated to deporting people. It's doing nothing but breaking up families, man. I mean, I even know a lot of my personal friends from back from Compton, my Latino brothers and sisters, man. They're losing family members left and right because of what's being implemented, and it's just it's nothing but a bad situation, man. And prison is definitely something that's also affected my family too. I've had a lot of family members going in and out. Not because they're violent crimes, violent criminals or anything. It's just the circumstances that we're put under because of the places that we live at. And this movie set in South Central LA. Again, another place that Ava DuVernay is from, Compton. So of course it's a perspective of the city. Not necessarily of Compton, but of Los Angeles that is never really seen. And this main character plays a nurse too. I mean, that's kind of it's doing all the things to kind of show you the reality of a lot of these women who live in these communities. There's even the whole thing where she dropped out of school to support her husband. And while she dropped out of medical school to do that, so now she's a nurse. I mean, that's the reality, unfortunately, for a lot of women of color who live in these poor communities. Not poor, I should say, but these non-privileged, non-thought about, cared about communities, and they're facing that kind of scrutiny and oppression just because of the people that they love and the people that they care for. And their dreams and goals and ambitions are getting in the way by the real life circumstances that honestly are very fixable, but are just never addressed. So this movie definitely hints on that, but it's a very personal film too. It's also very romantic in the sense of getting that story of her falling in love with the bus driver, with the David Oyelowo character. It's very much in the sense of you can understand. I mean, she was frustrated with her husband for cheating on her. So she does go to somebody who seems actually caring and is actually trying to get out of jail and get out of this, not get out of jail, but get, progress his life forward and move in a positive direction. Whereas clearly the husband is not, because, he still has to fight parole hearings because of, different stuff he's committing inside. So it's crazy, man. I don't know if you have, I don't know if how this film touches you personally. I know obviously it's not the same kind of circumstances, not the same kind of environment, not the same situation, but I'm sure there's, for I think everybody who's watching, this film or this show about this film, there's something that touches everybody personally about the leaving of a family member by circumstances that honestly shouldn't be there. So
yeah, I mean, it's also too like the testament of a strength of a woman who's dealing with extraordinary circumstances that are coming against her, right? That's such a difficult situation. And it's also like a weird kind of, like you said, romantic, but it's also like that weird, crazy situation of like love and of connection and of loyalty, right? Because you feel like you're loyal to someone, that you have to stay loyal to them. And that's kind of how we grow in society, which is fair, you know? But when it's extraordinary circumstances that are against you, literally with incarceration, it's like, how is that possible? Like, how is there a place where you move on and yet you don't feel like you've betrayed someone, right? That's interesting too. Also, I feel like I have a pretty good eye when it comes to talent as far as directing. I'm sorry, as far as acting goes. And I can't lie, man, I will never forget just the sheer power of acting that David Oyelowo brings in every single one of his roles. Like, this guy is dope. Like, he's dope. He's such a good freaking actor. And the fact that he can kind of transform himself, like in this movie, he's kind of like a, you know, compared this to like his performance as Martin Luther King. It's crazy. Like, it's crazy. It's crazy how like much he changes his body, his shape, his accent, his figure, his mannerisms. Like, he's a true chameleon. Like, that to me is like the biggest takeaway for me of this movie is mainly that, because the fact that this guy kind of came out of nowhere with this movie is like, you see the two careers go hand in hand with David Oyelowo and Ava DuVernay.
Yeah, I mean, we could kind of jump into Selma too.
Yeah, man, let's do it. Let's jump into Selma. This is the one I was talking about in the beginning of the podcast when I talked about one of the most underappreciated, incredible movies that I've seen in quite a long time. I remember watching this and being super freaking blown away by it, and just in awe of capturing it. It really seemed like Ava brought Martin Luther King to life in this movie. It's crazy how this movie didn't get more recognition, because this one felt like one of those, you know, biographical type films that truly transcend the test of time and transcend anything we've seen with a character, and with, like you said before, an American icon like Martin Luther King that did so much for so many people in this nation and in this world, to be honest. It's absolutely well handled, emotional, moving. It's smart, powerful. The performances are off the charts. It's just incredibly well directed. The visuals are crazy. Like, this movie's just nuts, man. It's just nuts the way they handle so many different issues within the civil rights movement and within what Martin Luther King did, and the way he went about it in a very authentic way. Right. You know what I'm saying? Right. Like, it felt real. It didn't feel like this bigger than life kind of biblical film where Martin Luther King is like this, you know, Moses, like parting the Red Sea. Like, it felt like a real dude. It was just trying his hardest to do what he needed to do.
Yeah, no, it's not. You know, this movie's very contained. I think that's probably what makes it so effective. It takes place in 1965 during the March of Selma, Alabama. This is a prominent piece of civil rights movement history, and they show you the context of it in the first couple of scenes in this film. Starting off with Oprah's character trying to go vote, and she's trying like multiple times to vote, and she keeps getting rejected. I think that, what was it, the guy says like how many judges we have, and then she's like 67, and then he says name them all or something like that. I'm like, what? But that's the conditions. And think about it, this was 1965, man. This wasn't like 18 something. This wasn't like 1910. Like, this was 50 years ago, man. This is the conditions that people really put under. And I know a lot of people in the South. I mean, my grandma told me stories all the time. Before she moved to California, of like all of the different, you know, trials and tribulations, all that kind of stuff. So it's just crazy, man. And I definitely think this film puts the conflict in the forefront in that respect. It also gives you context of another problem too, was the, we talked about in the Spike Lee episode with the 4 little girls being bombed in the church, at the very opening in Birmingham, Alabama. So it's like they show you those two things back to back to kind of give you the scope of what the issues are here, but very much focusing on the way that Martin Luther King and his team of civil rights movement activists pushed those issues to the forefront and marched and caused an upset across the country, bringing people together to fight like the injustices and stuff.
Yeah, it's such a striking and disturbing image to start on with those 4 little girls in the church.
Yeah.
Because it combines, it was in the church, right? It was in the church.
Yeah.
But because it combines that. It combines the terms of innocence on top of a supposedly holy place, right? Mm. The destruction of innocent children inside what's supposed to be a place of worship and of peace. Mm-hmm. Like, that's the most like disturbingly offensive, evil thing that anyone can do. Mm-hmm. It's just evil. So opening up with that shows you like this is how far people were willing to go to fulfill their racist desires. Like, it's something that's super deep as far as like how, destructive and how evil this moment was in the country. Mm-hmm. And specifically in this area of the U.S. I mean, there was a ton of people there that were just like hard freaking core. Mm-hmm. And we see it in this movie. But what I like about this movie as well is the fact that you mentioned that Oprah thing. That to me is so powerful because it shows how there was always a way to find a loophole, to find some way to bring an African-American person down. Mm-hmm. There was always a way, and they would always find that loophole no matter what. They always fought against the federal government to make sure that they don't have to follow the rules that they were trying to put into the United States, because that's what the U.S. federal government was trying to do. And the state government for Alabama specifically, and that governor, remember that governor? What was that guy's name again?
I know you're talking.
You know who I'm talking about, right?
Yeah, I can't think of it.
And how like obsessed he was with like keeping the freaking African American people down.
George Wallace, I think.
George Wallace, yeah. And he was just addicted to that. It was almost like a drug to him.
Yeah.
And the fact that that's what this moment was, and that's why Martin Luther King specifically took his movement to that location, and took it in a very
faced it head on
in a very pragmatic way, using nonviolent protest, using tons of people, using local groups, using young people, using these were all these moves and strategies that Martin Luther King used were low-key genius, man. Like, this was some genius level stuff as far as like how to make a movement. Like, you've talked about this before, as far as like finding a leader, finding the right time, finding the right place, expanding your audience, expanding your boundaries, bringing in more people. How do you reach more people? All this stuff is like movement, leadership, revolution 101. Like, this is the type of stuff that you write books about as far as making a movement and making revolutions. And Martin Luther King was following it to the T. And like, that's what's so good about this movie, is that you see not only his personal life, but also his strategy as far as using that. And I love that kind of stuff. I love finding out about the details of it.
Yeah, and they do a good job of incorporating the entire team that's behind him, too. I mean, Loretta Scott King, his wife, but also just the people, Tessa Thompson in this movie, Andre Holland, I believe, is also in this as well. Common stars in it and wrote the third rap song to everyone Best Original Song at the Academy Awards, Glory, with John Legend. And there's, I mean, it's a stat cast. The homeboy who's plays the oldest son and Empire is also in this movie. Cuba Gooding Jr. pops up. I didn't even know Cuba Gooding Jr. is still alive. But he's in this. It's a lot. It's a really
who's a big homie who pops up in a bunch of movies. This guy. I see him everywhere, man. No, it's not him. This guy. You know who I'm talking about?
Yeah. Yeah. Wendell Pierce.
He's in freaking everything.
Yeah.
And
He was in The
also,
Wire. He normally plays like the cop characters.
Yeah.
We didn't even talk about him when we talked about Spike Lee, man.
That's
I feel
right.
really bad
He's
about
in a lot
that.
of Spike Lee movies.
Yeah.
He's in a ton of Spike.
He has my favorite line in 25th Hour, where he's like, I don't know, I can't remember the exact line, but it's that whole scene in 25th Hour where they're searching his apartment and like they find like the coke in Edward Norton's thing. He's like, whooshy, like he does the whole Wire thing, but he does it there, and then he does it like even, I don't know, he does it funnier. But he has like a whole.
He's great.
Yeah, he's a great actor. But he's good in this too. And
speaking of the cast, speaking of emotional moments too with the cast, I want
Keith
to.
Stanfield, I'm sorry.
That's what I was about to say. This movie has one of the most difficult emotional scenes that Dude, I'm telling you, man. This one in Fruitvale Station is up there as far as like that deep emotional scene. Is when Lakeith Stanfield's character, man. Yeah. That scene of, as far as like the mother and seeing the body and all that stuff. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
That is just Jesus Christ. I think I actually cried and I don't cry in any movie. Oh, really? Yeah, I don't cry. Like, I'm not a crier. Like some guys are criers. I think I actually did cry when I saw like a verge of tears as far as like if you get me to cry, I had some deep shit, bro. That was hardcore. Like the fact it's not even like a son losing a father or a father or a son losing a mother, which is devastating, but the devastation of a young man and the potential that you lose, and a mother losing that young man is just awful. And we saw that obviously in Fruitvale, that when I talked about that scene at the end, when I was like, dude, I'm getting emotional, bro. And I texted you, I was like, bro, I'm gonna cry right now. And I'm like texting you, RB3, I'm crying, bro. But that scene is so powerful, man. And it's just that scene in general is just enough to get you just riled up, man. Like,
right,
and
it does get you riled up, and they follow that with the amazing speech that he gives at the church to speak to the people. And I think that's also something worth noting too. I don't know if you know this or not, but in making the movie of Selma, they couldn't use any of Martin Luther King's like real speeches. So like all of these were like originally written for this movie. I think,
they couldn't get the rights to that?
Yeah, I think
Holy crap.
I think Spielberg had brought the rights for DreamWorks like Entertainment back in like 2009, and they're still holding on to them. So like when they're making this movie, Ava DuVernay, who I know that the credits say it's like Paul Webb who like wrote the script. Really Ava DuVernay rewrote like 95% of it, including all of the speeches. So they're all like original speeches.
That's crazy.
Yeah,
that is crazy. Yeah, and obviously, let's talk about the scene in the movie where Martin Luther King spends time in jail, and it's left on kind of Coretta to take up the wheel and take up the mantle. And how every time I talk to my dad, and this is a testament to my dad too, about Martin Luther King, because we're big fans of as far as a historical figure. Every time, dude, that I bring up Martin Luther King to my dad, he's like, "Don't forget about Coretta." Like he always does that to me, because he really feels like my dad's very passionate about Coretta King and how she had such a big hand in this movement, as much as Martin Luther King had. And this movie shows just a glimpse of that. What do you think of her character and how she's portrayed in this movie?
I think that's important too, and I think that's definitely a perspective that Ava brings to it, from being a black woman, and and showing the contributions that black women had towards this movement, because all the male figures, Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, they get the big, they get the holidays, they get the movies and all that stuff, but it's really the people that are behind them that are doing a lot of the work too. So they really highlight that too, and I think it's like I said earlier, this movie addresses a lot of flaws of Martin Luther King as a person too. The whole thing with the affair, and I think it even speaks to a bigger point, the fact that the FBI was like actually tracking him the entire time. They were like it was they had a lot of the FBI, the CIA, like all these different organizations were kind of working under the government, under government to try and belittle this figure, trying to belittle Martin Luther King and what he was trying to go for. They spied on him. They bugged his phones. There was I've read things of like them calling the houses, you know, with voice impersonators, like acting like Malcolm's like having sex with like other women, you know, like all this like weird stuff that they're, you know, again, they were trying to defame a movement that was pushing against their agenda. So it was even a bigger thing. But yeah, no, but they do address his affairs, and I think in a really smart and subtle way, in that long conversation that he's having with his wife, and with like a lot of like long pauses and gaps, like to really get you to feel like the awkwardness, like the silence between between these two people. But then ultimately, as a married couple, they reconcile with that, and you know, keep the movement pushing forward. So
yeah,
really
that's a big moment in the movie too, is the fact that they chose to address that, right? Because
Yeah.
that's a choice. A lot of I've been thinking about that too, is that when you choose to talk about certain things, especially delicate things like a Martin Luther King affair, that's a very deliberate, expressive choice. You know that you're getting into some deep water, and you better know how to swim if you're going to get into deep water.
Yeah.
And Ava like balances that really well, like you said, with that great scene and that great realistic conversation that they have.
Yeah, and it's not, like I said, it's not judgmental. You know, it's not like prosecuting him like he's a bad man because he's, you know, he had an affair. It's really just showing the humanity behind this figure and the complexities that we put in our idols and everything. So it's really deep. There's a lot of really powerful things that are being said in this film, and I definitely think that's what they're going. You know, the fact that they were able to take those kind of risks and go for it is essential.
Have you ever read the letters from Birmingham jail? Have you read that?
Yeah.
The letters from
Yeah.
Because I've read it. I read it back in college. I haven't read them since college, but isn't that just the craziest stuff? Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. For me personally, like I remember reading that, and I remember hearing it too, where someone actually read them out loud, and thinking to myself like, holy crap, that's like next. We talked about it when we talked about Spike Lee and Malcolm X, where Malcolm X had these two, Malcolm X and Martin Luther King, are two of the greatest speakers of all time. I'm talking all time, as far as speakers, as far as talented, truly like God-given talent, like amazing talented speakers. But they both had kind of a different approach to language and to words and to the kinds of expressions that you use when you speak, right? I mean, they're both kind of preachers. Martin Luther King is a preacher. That's literally what his job was beforehand. And Malcolm X is what Minister Malcolm, right? Is what they call him, because he's a minister in the Muslim church. But at the same time, they both have a different approach to preaching and to communicating messages. And when I read those letters, I remember thinking to myself, like, man, that is not a speaker. That is a poet. Like that, Martin Luther King was a poet as far as expressing himself in metaphors and in similes and in analogies and in moments and in examples that like just descriptive, incredible detail that the greatest authors in the world will read that and think it's from, you know, an amazing author, but it's actually from, you know, a preacher.
Right.
You know, that to me is like a huge testimony that I feel like this movie captures really well, is the amazing speaking ability and his way with words that is just so like captivating, because that's kind of what you need in a movement, man. I mean, you need someone who's just sucks you in with the way he speaks and how he uses language, right? That to me is like so powerful, because it can kind of like lure you in and make you believe what he is saying, because he's just so incredibly powerful with the English language.
Yeah, and I think that's another testament to Ava and her way of writing those speeches, rewriting those speeches, and also to David Oyelowo's performance in this film, the way he delivers all of that stuff. I mean, he embodies like the essence, the rhythm. I know they both said they listened to like a lot of his speeches over and over again to kind of capture the rhythm, the style, all of that of the way he spoke, the way his voice increments, like the subtleties of it, and they did it really well.
Let's do two more things before we move on. First thing I want to say is, on that note, one of the biggest, I was thinking about this as I watched Wrinkle in Time, because I was thinking about Ava, was the biggest Oscar snub, I think, in like recent memory, is David Oyelowo for Selma. How the heck was he not nominated for. How the heck did he not win for Best Actor? I mean, back me up, man. Is that not one of the most transformative performances? I mean, he literally embodied the character of Martin Luther King.
Yeah.
Like, that was Martin Luther King. I'm still convinced that that was him. As far as, like, just the way he expressed himself, the way he moved, his body, his language, his eyes, his everything. I was just like, holy freaking crap. That's an Oscar-winning performance if I've ever seen one. Back me up on that, man. I mean, is that not, like, incredibly... That's a huge snub.
No, I mean
that's almost like an offensive snub.
No, I mean it really is.
I would say, like, it's a snub to not let him win, but not even nominate him. That's like a travesty.
Yeah, I mean that's, unfortunately that was the first year of the Oscars So White campaign starting to kick off. Because there is, and which is weird because this movie was nominated for only Best Picture and Best Original Song.
And that's it.
That's
crazy, man.
But I definitely think, I mean, that's a big part of it. I mean, you could have nominated David. I mean, listen, they're not, the Academy, and I've said this from time to time, but it's worth repeating. They're not, like, really interested in rewarding African American actors who are playing parts that are not slaves, not help, not maids, not disparage people. If whenever there's a movie about a positive figure like Malcolm X, of course Denzel's not going to win for that. He's going to win where he plays the corrupt police officer. With a movie like this with David Oyelowo playing Martin Luther King, of course that's not going to get nominated. But Chiwetel Ejiofor in 12 Years a Slave, give him that, give that Best Picture. And of course, I mean, 12 Years a Slave is a fantastic movie, and Chiwetel Ejiofor is amazing in it. But that being said, you can see the problem here. There's a pattern. There's a very clear, problematic thing, and they just, I mean, again, you go a whole list of black actors, Halle Berry, and it's like all the most problematic, most self-indulgent. Meanwhile, if you're like, Colin Firth and you play like King, Louis, whatever, in the King's Speech, and you can win Best Actor for that. It's just, you know what I mean? Like that
is one of the weirdest. I can't lie. That is one of the weirdest snubs. It's just weird. I just find it odd, almost as if like the only explanation you would have for not nominating him is that you didn't. Like, no one saw the movie.
Yeah.
That's the only other explanation. Because to me, it's like, if you saw that, if anyone saw that, I don't care if you're the oldest Oscar voter ever, you would be like, all right, I mean, I can't deny that stuff. That's just real shit.
I think it was even, if not the highest grossing, one of the highest grossing Best Picture nominees of that year.
And it's crazy because that's the same year that, no offense, and I keep bringing this up, but that it was a controversy because, let's face it, he was good, but damn, he was not even close to everyone else. Bradley Cooper for American Sniper. Bradley Cooper was good in American Sniper. Fine. But Jesus Christ, David Oyelowo became Martin Luther King.
Yeah.
Jake Gyllenhaal was the creature of Nightcrawler.
Yeah, Lou Bloom.
he became
Lou Bloom, by the way, Lou Bloom. You're always
man.
surfing in our comment sections, man.
Yeah.
Respect to Lou Bloom in the comments.
I mean, he became Lou, man. I mean, that was crazy. And David Oyelowo became Martin Luther King. But they were like, nah, let's give it to the sniper guy. Yeah. And I'm like, I get it. It's cool. But I'm like, nah, man, just because he lifted weights for like a few scenes, I'm like... I mean, he got big, and then he had a country accent.
Yeah, I don't get that one. I don't get that one. But yeah, no.
But that's my last thought because I feel like it should be said that this will go down in history, in my opinion, as one of the biggest Oscar snubs ever.
Yeah.
Ever.
No, I mean, no doubt. I mean, it had 99% Rotten Tomatoes, if I'm not mistaken, 7.5 on IMDb, and the cinema score is an A+. So audiences are definitely behind this movie. The fact that Ava DuVernay couldn't get credit for the screenplay writing on this is unacceptable. Just shows you the problems that come in like contracts and WGAs and all that kind of stuff. So it's a shame she wasn't nominated for writing. Shame she wasn't nominated for directing. And Bradford Young doing the cinematography for this movie. I mean, those incredible those incredible like slow motion shots, like on the bridge. Where the police on the horses are fighting people and bringing not fighting people, yeah, like literally fighting people, like beating people down. You know what I mean? Like as they're standing there non-violently trying to hold the fort down. Just those brutal images of those beatings, and it's all around. And those massive like wide shots they would cut to with a little bit of haze on the top of on the bottom of each frame, and that specific type of lens they used for those cameras. The editing in this movie was really well done. The pacing was strong. It didn't like linger on past this point.
I'm such a pacing fanatic that you're right. The pacing was phenomenal in this movie.
Yeah, and just ending on that like that last speech, that like powerful rousing like celebration of an accomplishment. And I know this movie came under a lot of controversy when it came out because of its portrayal of Lyndon B. Johnson.
That's right. That's right. I remember
as a political figure.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. What are your thoughts on?
Yeah, I it's hard to say, man, because I wasn't there. I'm not a Lyndon B. Johnson rep or like a Lyndon B. Johnson fan. But yeah, it is a little bit interesting the way that you can make an argument that Ava might have gone a little too hard on Lyndon. I know that I watched it with my dad, and he was like, well, I thought Lyndon was a little more, woke than that. But I guess he wasn't. I don't know.
Well, I mean, listen, presidents as political figures don't really have that much power to begin with.
Sure.
But, he could have done more to aid the effort that Martin Luther King was putting in. So I think there's both. I mean, both sides of the coin is what is what's represented. But I think definitely from the side of Martin Luther King, there wasn't enough support from the government. There wasn't, and we have like the FBI and the CIA trailing you 24/7. Fake phone calls. Fake terrorist threats, real terrorist threats with no protection from the government or the police or whatnot. It's just it's unfortunate, and that's ultimately he was assassinated too. So it's just like there should have been more of an effort put behind what King was doing, particularly by the president, by a lot of the United States government. So I definitely think that's one of the big problems with. But then you look at, that's the difference in perspective, right? You look at this compared to that like Bryan Cranston, Anthony Mackie HBO film, all the way.
I didn't see that. Called.
Yeah, but this one paints a very negative portrayal of Lyndon B. Johnson. The other one paints a very like positive, upright, but directed by Jay Roach.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like it's again difference of perspective.
Sure.
Between coaches, but it's definitely, I think that's definitely a note worth pointing out.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Once again, guys, as we close out Selma, one of the most underappreciated great movies. I love it. So let's move on to another documentary from her, which is 13th. This one got a lot of attention. I actually think this one was nominated
for best documentary.
That's right. It didn't win though, right?
It didn't win. It was nominated against The People, or I'm sorry, OJ. Made
That's right. That OJ one was crazy though.
Yeah. We just watched that in our race, class, and gender.
That ESPN one, right?
Yeah. We only watched part one.
That ESPN doc is crazy. I recommend everyone check that out. And obviously I recommend 13th as well, because it really is an interesting one as well. What are your general thoughts on this, man? I mean, obviously it's all about incarceration. It's super political. Like it's literally about politics and about the systematic oppression of African American people it's basically about cocaine. It's about drugs. It's about
the war on drugs.
It's about the punishment for drugs and how it was kind of amplified in order to keep African American people in jail.
Yeah, no, I definitely think this is a movie. It's kind of like a good, I think, African American studies courses should show this movie as kind of like a good summarization of the plight of the plight of African Americans and Black men and women in America, because this movie kind of sums it all up from the beginnings of slavery and the institutions behind that, and then transitioning into the era of the Jim Crow, the segregation, the civil rights movement, which was addressed in Selma, and then moves into today and how this is kind of a repurposed, reestablished way of kind of enforcing slavery upon people of color and people who are locked up behind bars. For a lot of, and like we said before, like for a lot of reasons, a lot of times it's for nonviolent offenses, for drugs or whatever. And it really goes into how the system has failed black men and women across the country because of those politicians of past and present that are doing nothing are not even providing a solution, just actively working against people of color. I know there's that whole thing with the Nixon administration that came out with the how they used marijuana as they used marijuana and heroin, and the created the war on drugs to lock up people who were against the Vietnam War, or against what the administration was going for. So they put, and even one of Nixon's officials even came out and said, like, they pushed weed on the hippies and heroin on the black people, and crack, which was brought into this country by government, and they used those institutions to lock these people up so they wouldn't have the opportunities to vote, so they wouldn't have a voice in speaking out against the wars and the industrial complexes that have destroyed and are destroying our country. So it's just crazy stuff, man.
It really is, man.
Yeah.
It's absolutely intense, and it's really like, it's kind of insane how I think everything is about severity. Everything is about severity. And I think that's the specific thing this documentary focuses on, is not even, well, it is the drugs, obviously, but it's the severity of the punishment for drugs, right? Even today, and I know today is kind of like a weird day to say this, but even today with the Odell Beckham stuff that came out today, I don't know if you've been following sports news.
No, I haven't.
So Odell got caught with like crack and weed. So
Crack?
And weed. So he was smoking a blunt.
You should put weed before crack, though, man.
That's true. My bad. But that's kind of what they were saying, because I listened to a sports show on ESPN called First Take. I recommend it. It's a great show. And Max Kellerman and Stephen A. Smith is so funny because they debate about this shit, which is kind of real shit. But it's always so funny how Stephen A. is like super like anti-drug.
Get off the weed.
Stay off the weed. And Max Kellerman is like, give me some weed. Pass that blunt. On like live TV. And he literally this morning, man, he almost said bullshit because he was like talking about this shit, and he was like, Max is like crazy, but he was like, this war on drugs is bullshit. This is all bullshit. Weed is like the most harmless shit ever. But anyways, he got
crack though.
Crack is different, and he said that too, and he admitted that on TV. But what I'm saying is, like, this has always like been in the news and stuff. Like, this is even like in sports news with Odell Beckham being caught with like a blunt and then like freaking crack on the side. And it's like one of those things where it's all about severity of punishment, right? Where it's like, this isn't necessarily about self-control or bodily harm. It's more about, what can I do to keep you in prison? What can I do to keep the loop going? The loop meaning stuck in prison, get out of prison, can't get a job, need to make money, sell drugs again, go back into prison, do it again. That's kind of a loop that keeps happening over and over again. And it's a very deliberate loop.
Yeah, and they do a good job of showing that's not necessarily just like right-wing or left-wing politicians. It's both. It's, they show how the three strikes rule that was enforced by
Clinton?
By Clinton. Yeah. How that also severely negatively impacted black communities, and how that, like you said, literally it's a revolving door, man. Once you get caught for some shit, they're gonna catch you for something else. They're gonna catch you again, and boom, you're locked away for the rest of your life, almost. And that's really unfortunate. And I think
it really is, especially for like some, like, I don't know, man. I think maybe I've just been more around certain people, but it's just like it's not necessary, man. It's just not. The severity of the punishment is too much.
Yeah.
Versus what the crime is.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think that's the biggest. I definitely think in addressing how the private and public prison systems like actually work in this country, and the fact that a lot of these private prisons are making money off the prisoners, and a lot of these public prisons are overcrowded, overstuffed, but they're still they're still in place because there's nowhere else to put all these people that they're locking up.
Yeah. Didn't they say like some crazy statistics of like how many people are locked up versus like the past or something like that? What was the stat?
I can't remember exactly. I haven't seen. This is probably the one.
It's literally like on the posters and stuff.
Yeah. This isn't one. This isn't. I didn't rewatch this one, unfortunately. I didn't have a chance to. But also, thank you. Salute to Netflix for making this documentary. If you're a fan of this podcast, I'm a big champion of what Netflix does, and the fact that they gave this opportunity to produce this documentary and to have all of these incredible they have all these incredible Black leaders and writers and activists a part of this on the biggest streaming platform, and for it to be nominated for an Oscar for Best Documentary. Salute to Netflix for that. But
and speaking of Netflix, if you're not in the U.S., which I know a lot of my Latino people out there, you can now watch Annihilation on Netflix.
Yeah. Oh man, that makes me. You know what, man? Because I've been low key struggling to like.
I just saw it last week, and it's like I saw a tweet today by a Mexican friend of mine who was like, "I'm gonna watch Annihilation on Netflix," and I'm like, "Bruh, yeah, I just saw it last week." I'm glad I saw it in a movie theater, but I just thought that was a fun fact.
Actually, my movie pass is just now coming in the mail. So I'm getting ready to start abusing that. I thought it came. They sent me an email yesterday. They're like, "Hey, your movie card is in the mail. Get ready to activate it." I'm like, finally, fucking yes! I get to see A Wrinkle in time. Yeah. My movie pass. It didn't happen, but it's okay though. I'm more than happy to pay full price to see a movie directed by.
I don't movie pass for a variety of reasons. If you want to find out why, tweet at me at Squadleader Race. Anyways, this was what I was talking about.
Oh, the 40.2% of black men.
No, 40%
making up the population of prisons.
Yeah.
Whereas African Americans only represent 13 to 13.5% of the population in the United States. And I love, you're pulling up the Google images here. I'm trying to put these into the show too. All the different like screens that they show the different statistics of
incarcerated people.
Of course, incarcerated people. So I love that they put those images in the forefront. And they used some really powerful songs in there. I'm really shout out to using that Run the Jewels song. Ooh. I'm sorry, not Run the Jewels. Killer Mike, the Reagan or Ronald Reagan song that he did. They use that in the film when talking about the section of Ronald Reagan, how his administration and policies had a negative impact to that too. And again, they really do a good job of showing how each different administration, how each point in history has just worked against and more and more towards putting more people in jail and locking more people up. Is really extraordinary. The craftsmanship of the documentary, the animation, the music, and the interviews too. I mean, they have some pretty prominent faces in Black activism as well.
Yeah, what's her face is the biggest one, Angela Davis.
Yeah.
She's all over this documentary. Her.
Yeah. Who was one of the original, Black activists in this country.
Yeah.
And was locked up for a super long time, due to that, and is probably one of the big faces in a lot of the movements that we're familiar with today.
Absolutely. She's one of the most recognizable figures, for sure. Like, you can show an image of her, and everyone knows who she is just by her face, basically. Yeah. So, absolutely, she's definitely one of the ones in the forefront. I think they said, like, there's so many crazy stats in this documentary. Like, I forget something about, like, how many people were slaves back then versus how many people
are locked up now.
And I think it's more.
It's way more, yeah.
More African Americans are in prison than they were slaves.
Yeah.
Which is like, what? Yeah. That sounds ridiculous. Like, that sounds almost, like, unbelievable. But apparently that's true. And it's very much like an eye-opening type of documentary. And it's also kind of about, besides the incarceration and besides all the war on drugs and all that stuff, but it's also about racism. I mean, at the end of the day, this all comes from people's desire to be inertly racist or to have that inward racism that they have and express it outwardly.
It's like inward and an inward,
That's not what I meant.
That was not, I thought you said inward.
Inward, as far as
I was like, yo, what is he saying? And
it's
then I was
like on the inside.
That's a cool double entendre, man. Somebody gotta put that into like a rap song.
There you go, man. Yeah. I just made it up. Pay me that royalty money.
Yeah.
But yeah, how people have used their racism as a way to this is their way. This is their weapon for their racism. Like, if that makes any sense. Like, this is what they use to fulfill their racist desires. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, at
racism N-words leading to people saying the N-word. Am I right?
And expressly outward.
Word and word. Let's go, baby. Sign me, Capitol Records.
Here you go, man. Def Jam, holla.
Def Jam.
But basically, it's just, at the end of the day, this is all a version of systematic racism and systematic oppression that has existed in this country for such a long time, and that has been amplified in this country now.
Yeah.
Like, now more than ever. Like, it feels odd being in a country where race has always been a hot button issue, but now it's like, this is next level.
Right.
Next level.
Right.
Where, like, people are actively willing to wave their racist flags and be like, I'm racist, come at me, bro, kind of thing. Whereas before they would just be like, oh, hey, and then just be like, oh, I hate, that person because they're black or Latino or whatever. But now they're like, oh, hey, and they flip you off. Like, now it's like such an outward version of what they had and the inside. I'm not going to keep saying outward, inward anymore. Yo, it's an outward version of what they had inward, and then it portrays them to say the N-word.
Yeah.
Anyways, I'm done.
We got to drop a 5 beat. Just drop a mixtape.
Mixtape, man. Any last words on 13th, man?
Nah, man, it's an incredible documentary. I also want to say this film came out in the same year that, like we mentioned, O.J. Made in America. Also, the documentary about James Baldwin. I am not my Negro or something.
Oh
Negro?
yeah, I'm not your Negro.
And, not your Negro. Yeah, that one.
I didn't see that one. How was that?
That's a fantastic movie, man.
That's
Especially
awesome.
if you're a fan of James Baldwin's writing. For somebody who studied African kind of studies, I've read a lot of James Baldwin's work, and it's very powerful stuff. And I think this movie kind of communicates kind of like the lost writings of his as well. So great documentary. You should check out. This was like the comeback year for the Oscars after the Oscars So White 2 years in a row.
Especially for docs.
So yeah. I think there was actually, if I'm not mistaken, 4 out of the 5 nominees for Best Documentary were African American filmmakers.
I think so, yeah.
And that was also, of course, we had Moonlight nominated for Best Picture, Fences, and Hidden Figures. Very good year for representation of African American storytelling. Salute to the Academy for doing that.
Sure.
For once.
Let's talk about A Wrinkle in Time.
Yeah.
So this movie came out.
Spoiler review.
Yeah. Let's spoil it.
Yeah.
Why not? So this movie came out, and honestly, it's a big budget movie. It's the biggest budget for a female director, I think, of all time, right?
Live action. Yes.
Live action of all time.
I think it was Kung Fu Panda 2 was directed by Jennifer Yeoh.
That's right, Jennifer. I forgot about her.
Yeah.
Yeah, because she comes out in all those commercials.
Yeah.
I forget what commercials they were, but they were like promoting it. But anyways, so that's a huge deal, an enormous deal, because not even Patty Jenkins had that, right? And Patty Jenkins had Wonder Woman. But this movie didn't do well box office wise. I mean, at the end of the day, it didn't do terrible. It just didn't do as good as Disney wanted.
Yeah, it's funny. I think when we conceived the Ava DuVernay, we're gonna put Ava DuVernay plus A Wrinkle in Time spoiler review. But I don't know how many clicks that's gonna drive.
At this point, I don't expect any clicks.
hey, listen, Hey, salute to A Wrinkle in Time, though, man. I finally saw it today.
Okay, let's get into it. What are your general thoughts?
Hey, I didn't think it was bad, man. Like, a lot of people really shitting on it. I thought it was pretty good, actually. I thought it was kind of dope. I thought a lot of the ideas that they were trying to communicate, I thought it was, like, very socially. You know what it was to me, though, man? What it honestly was to me the most overall is this movie. I would have really loved to have seen this as a little kid. You know what I mean? I think as a little kid, this would have blew my mind in the same way. I remember when I was little, Bridge to Terabithia was coming out. You remember that one? And, like, the commercial was, like, this fantasy land. And, that was a young Josh Hutcherson, too, right? This fantasy land. They're going on an adventure. They're searching through the woods. Like, it's this big, epic fantasy. Like, every kid was like, yo, we can't wait to see this. We actually go into the movie. It's, like, this super fucking depressing story about, like, this girl who died in the woods and, like, this little kid trying to cope with it. Like, it was, like, super depressing, man. And like, yo, so that's what, but this is what I wanted, you know what I mean? Out of Bridge to Terabithia, this is what this is what I was looking for the entire time. The big fantasy, some big ideas, some colorful visuals. I mean, this movie looked incredible. This movie was from the visual effects. Some of the visual effects were a little funny, but for the most part, they're all looking like really awesome. It was really imaginative, very colorful from a cinematography standpoint. And even the stuff that was like outside of the fantasy realms, I thought was handled pretty decently.
Sure.
So I thought it was pretty dope. I thought it was cool.
Yeah. So overall, you liked it.
Yeah, I was a little confused by the ending though. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
I think I blinked and then missed something, and then it just kind of ended to me.
Really?
Yeah, I don't get anything that happened like the last 20 minutes. Honestly, I don't think maybe I wasn't paying enough attention, man. But like, I literally just watched it before coming here today. So
Gotcha.
like, maybe I haven't processed it, but I literally have no idea what happened.
Yeah.
So maybe that's my fault as a moviegoer. Maybe not the fault of the film. But I think that's a flaw for me.
I can't lie. So I saw the trailers of this movie, and I remember people's reactions to the trailers of this movie, and I was like losing my mind because I didn't get what everyone else was seeing.
Right.
Because everyone was like, "That looks so cool," and I was like, "That looks like crap."
Really? Yeah.
I thought the trailers looked terrible. And then when the reviews started to come out, and they were kind of really negative, like they were really negative reviews, I was like, "Oh, I was right. It's going to be a bad movie." I went to see it, and I texted you because you texted me, "How was it?" It wasn't great, but it was not nearly as bad as the reviews have been saying.
Yeah.
Like I think one of my
some people were it's like incredibly awful.
Yeah, dude. Like
crazy.
one of my buddies went to Rotten Tomatoes and read one of those like Rotten Tomatoes headlines from like a critic, because we were talking about Wrinkle in Time. Because I was like, "Hey guys, have you seen it yet?" And my friends were like, "No, we haven't seen it, but look what this critic says." And he said something like, "A Wrinkle in Time is a disappointing mess that destroys your mind, blah, 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 and leaves you in a loop of suspension of disbelief that you cannot believe what you got into." It's something terrible. I was like, "Oh my God, that sounds like you're going through an awful experience and you're just in pain." Yeah. And it was not that at all. I was like, "Geez, they went hard on Wrinkle in Time, man." Yeah. It's not great. Speaking of pacing, I think the pacing's terrible in this movie. I think the exposition is terrible in this movie. I think the dialogue is pretty bad in this movie.
The dialogue's I wouldn't say dialogue.
The dialogue's pretty bad, dude.
Nah, man.
The dialogue's rough.
I'll say some of it. I will say
the dialogue is like cheesy, bro. That dialogue is like that cheese in a can cheesy.
Yeah.
That you shake up and you
the
spray cheese.
Yeah,
like that's that kind of cheesy, bro.
I didn't think it was that
it's
bad.
It's that cheap 99 cents cheesy, bro.
Nah, you know what it was to me? It literally felt like I was watching a Disney Channel movie again. That's what it felt like to me.
That's exactly right. It's a Disney Channel original movie with a big budget.
Hey man, I love
that's
Disney
not bad.
Channel
I
movies.
love Disney. Me too. I've talked about this on the Schmoes Know podcast. I've seen every single one of the Disney Channel original movies. I loved them as a kid. I think this is a perfect movie for a 6-year-old.
Yeah,
or for a 7-year-old.
Well, this movie,
like if I was 7 years old, like you said, I think this movie would be dope. Yeah. But me being like 27. Or gonna be 27. This is not. It just doesn't hit me.
Disney did a previous adaptation of this movie.
They did
in 2003. It was a Disney Channel movie.
Yes.
I didn't see it back then.
I didn't either. I heard about it before going to see this one.
Yeah. Like I barely heard about it. Yeah, but the same thing before seeing this one. That being said, though, hey, listen, I love Disney Channel movies. I always said I think the reason why I love Spider-Man: Homecoming so much because it feels like a big budget Disney Channel movie, but with Spider-Man, which is very true. Watch that movie and tell me it's not a Disney Channel movie.
Yeah, with the
let's
go.
Well, even that, like,
do a backflip, Spider-Man.
the scene where Peter Parker's like on the bus talking on the phone with Iron Man, like the way that camera set up is very Disney Channel-ish. Cool. It felt like very so. This movie kind of had that same feel too, but so maybe that's why I give it past a lot of dialogue. Sure. But I also appreciate kind of the relevance of it too. It definitely had like a flavor. It had a message. It had a thing about positivity and discovering oneself and self-love that I think is really important. That kids should understand. And I also think, and even from a pop culture standpoint, I really love that Mindy Kaling's character just like quote like random shit like Outcast and like Shakespeare and stuff. So, but yeah, no, definitely the message here I think is what propels this movie to like a higher thing for me.
I think absolutely you hit the nail on the head. The best part of this movie is the themes and messages in the movie. Like the way they tackle certain themes, whether it be depression, whether it be love, anger, balance, because they literally have a scene like where they're balancing on scales and they're balancing on rocks to signify balance. Get it? Balance. But I actually like that, because to me, I was like, yeah, that's what you need balance, bro. Because everyone else was like, she can't balance on a scale when she's literally not balanced on the inside. And I was like, that's kind of like a cool way to visualize it and to make it easy for kids to understand, where she's like, I can't be down. Zach Galifianakis. Yeah, that scene worked for me, because I was like, that's cool. Like, that's a cool idea to show kids, like, I'm too angry, and it's like, whoa, you got to be less angry, and then you'll be more balanced. Like that was cool. Like you said before, self-love, family, like the stuff you're willing to do for family. Well, even the themes and messages of this movie is the best part of the movie.
Well, even the Chris Pine character who leaves his family to kind of go on this.
That was hardcore too, bro. Yeah. I was like, bro, that's some messed up shit. That's your family, bro.
yeah. But I mean, that's kind of, you going into like the depression thing. Like, that's kind of what, if you're not necessarily depression, but if you're so interested in one thing, you have no other interests. You weigh your career more than you weigh your family and your life and everything. I mean, he really wanted to see what the Tesseract led him and what that frequency was that he was tapping into.
Sure.
But I think ultimately at the end of the movie, he realizes that, you can't really Tesseract without, isn't it something like the frequency is love or something like that?
Yeah, he did say that.
That
was a little cheesy, bro. That was so cheesy.
Hey, man, at least it's not Interstellar where Anne Hathaway sits in front of us for 3 minutes.
It's the same thing as Interstellar.
Yeah, not for 3 minutes though. You know what I mean?
This was for 2 hours, bro. It's the same thing.
No. But I will definitely say Chris Pine was great in this. Gugu Naftali.
I love her. I adore her. I've talked about her for years, man, since Beyond the Lights, bro. Have you seen Beyond the Lights?
Yeah.
Like, I've been, man, freaking her in Beyond the Lights.
Gina Prince Bythewood directed that too, by the way.
Yeah.
Great filmmaker.
Ever since I saw that, I was like, oh my God, who is this girl? Like, she's amazing. And then obviously she got big after Black Mirror, and then Cloverfield, and then now she's doing this. But she's great. I love her.
She's great in this, and I definitely think, my only thing with this movie, man, Oprah. What is Oprah doing, man?
What is to be honest, bro, I love Mindy Kaling, I love Reese Witherspoon, and I love Oprah, but what were any of them doing? I didn't get any of that stuff. They didn't explain any of it. All of a sudden, like Charles Wallace, and it's like, I met these 3 ladies who are alien god creatures from another dimension, and I'm like, what?
Well, see, that's,
where'd they come from, though?
Well, see, I
didn't like that at all.
You were saying you didn't like the exposition.
That's what I'm saying.
I didn't know there was any exposition in this movie.
That's what I'm saying. The way they chose to explain things to you was almost like, we're not going to explain it. Where they're like, we're literally just going to be like, this is some crazy person. And I'm like, well, who are they? What are they? Where do they come from? What is their expression? Why are they here? Who is a warrior? What are they talking about? How do they know Chris Pine? What is going on? Give me some exposition, bro. Like, the way they did exposition was just so bad that I was like, what's going on?
Yeah.
Like, Charles Wallace just walked into Mindy Kaling's house and then she fell asleep.
Was a little funny. Yeah,
and I was like, what's going on? She's rhyming and then she just falls asleep. Like, this was, I don't know, man. I didn't get it at all. Anything with them was terrible to me. Like, terrible.
Nah, man, I like this.
I love them too, and I don't, it's not like I don't like them, but at the same time, I was just like, I have no idea what that point was for that.
I love the scene where Reese Witherspoon turns into like the flying plant dragon.
I didn't get that either. I was like, why? What's going on?
That was amazing. I just kind of interpreted it as like they're from a different dimension. They're taking on human forms to like.
Yeah, I mean, I got it. I got it. Like, they're higher beings from a different dimension who intervene when something crazy happens.
Yeah, basically. I just didn't get why Oprah had to be 20 foot tall.
Because it's Oprah. Yeah. Dude, I literally, like, my friends were like, what does Oprah do? Because she looks like she's super out of place in this movie. And I'm like, Oprah plays God.
Yeah, she plays Oprah.
She plays God. Yeah. I am Oprah, your God. She's like flapping her wings. I'm like, what is going on?
She's like literally.
She got wings out of nowhere.
Dude, she's literally.
I am
like
your
20 feet
god.
tall.
Bow to me. I am Oprah.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what is going on? Is she like shooting this in like her living room right now,
like,
behind a green screen?
Low-key, she was just read. Her script was just like her self-help books. Like she was reading the entire time.
And
like,
she's just standing in a green screen.
Yeah.
The kids would never were near her.
Yeah.
No actor was ever near Oprah. We just like find out like behind the scenes or something.
Yeah,
like,
she can make
Oprah shot
film.
everything in her home.
She can make the trip out to New Zealand.
Couldn't make the
so
trip. She just shot
it,
everything
so.
green screen. And pretended the actors were there because she's Oprah. They're like, what am I playing in this? Oh, you're playing God? Oh, I'll take it. I'll take the role, Ava. But it just didn't work for me on a lot of levels. I did, like I said before, I like the themes and I like how they're targeting kids with those specific themes. And I actually had some people in my theater laugh and giggle during like that scene of like, also, let's talk about that too, but the scene where there's like a pop song playing and they're like the dad's like yelling at the son. It's like, you suck, son. And then the girl who's mean, Veronica, was like weighing herself, and she was like, had like
was
on
that?
the
That wasn't a
fridge.
pop song though. That was just the score.
No,
there
it
was
was a pop.
No,
No,
there was
it was a
pop
pop
song.
song.
Was it a pop song for that one?
100%.
All right.
It was something like, I cry, yeah, yeah.
No, there's definitely. I definitely thought the pop songs were in a bad place.
There was 3 or 4 pop songs.
No, I think there's three. There's definitely
3 pop song montages.
No,
3 pop song montages.
There's 2 pop song montages and a
3
pop song at the end.
3 pop songs. I'm telling you, I watched it the other day. I watched it, bro.
Dog, no.
I just watched it.
I will say I did like that they addressed like the whole darkness hitting Earth and how it affects different people. The bum or the old dude getting picked on by the kids. And
I like that scene.
Yeah.
In the scene where and then she's like anorexic.
Yeah,
and then the dad's yelling at the kid.
Yeah,
it's super over the top, but I liked it. And
Yeah.
a lot of my theater kind of giggled, and I was like, "Why are you giggling? It's actually really well done."
But is
like,
it over a pop song?
It is
really?
over a pop song.
I don't know. Man.
It is. They're like, I cried.
I know the two. I know the other.
I'm Sia.
I know
or like
SZA. I know
SZA.
Sia. I think it's Sia. Yeah, but
Or
or is it
SZA.
SZA? I don't know. It's Sia.
Both of them.
Yeah. I will say I did notice the pop songs though. When it did come
Did
on,
you
I was
not
like,
know?
this is.
I was like,
this is
whoa.
yeah.
This is like the third time.
Well, there's the one that threw me off the most. I think was the last one towards the end, where it's like this super dramatic moment, and like out of nowhere, I'm just like.
Friggin' Rihanna starts singing a ballad.
Yeah.
It's like, brah, come on.
And by the way, I never want to hear a Disney movie start its opening credits with DJ Khaled. We the best. Like, did you not notice that shit? The whole opening, or the closing credit songs was a DJ Khaled fucking joint. Like,
oh, no way.
Yeah.
I didn't even pay attention, dude.
It's like, we the best music. And it's like directed by Ava DuVernay.
That's terrible.
It's the last thing I want to see in the Disney film.
that I like that scene, to be fair. I did like that scene, but I did feel like there was an overuse of like pop song montages that were like a lot. There was a lot of them, dude. I was just like, oh my God. Obviously, let's talk about this 2 stars of the movie, which is what's her name? Storm Reed. I thought she was great.
Yeah, she was
I thought she was
a little mean.
Little mean? What do you mean?
She was very mean.
I don't think she was mean. She's just hurt, bro.
She's mean, dog.
Mean.
I think after a certain point, you gotta stop being mean to people. She hate, she didn't have the self-love. So
are you talking about mean to like Veronica? Was that girl's name? Veronica?
She's mean to everybody, man.
Bro, I would have punched Veronica in the throat, bro.
Oh yeah,
right in the throat.
I'm not
literally watching this movie. I watched this by myself, and I literally whispered to myself, "Right in the throat, right in the throat."
Wait.
Punch her right in the throat.
I gotta say this for transparency's sake. I low-key came into the movie kind of late. Parking took a little bit longer than I expected.
Ooh.
So I might have missed.
You missed that scene? That's like 20 minutes in the movie.
No, wait. I came in when George
no, it's like
Wallace,
5 minutes in the movie.
Yeah, I came in when George Wallace had like let in Reese Witherspoon for the first time.
Holy crap, bro. You missed a lot.
Oh, yeah, I missed a lot? All right. Shit, my bad.
You missed when they got it. Oh, my God. Never mind.
I missed a lot.
You didn't miss you missed some pretty bad.
I saw Mindy Kaling.
You missed 2 bad scenes.
Okay, maybe that's why I think favorably of this movie.
No, you missed the scene. There's a scene where teachers are talking bad about Chris Pine, and it's so bad. Like the dialogue is really.
Is that
bad.
where Andre Holland comes in?
No. He comes in later, but there's a scene where 2 teachers are like the most like Disney Channel teachers ever, and they're like talking behind Charles Wallace, and he's eating his lunch. And they're like, did you hear about Mr. Blah, blah, blah? He totally left his family. What a jerk. And it's like so over the top that I'm like, oh. oh, it's bad. But anyways, Storm Reed, her character, like
and George
throws
Wallace
a basketball at
really?
a girl.
Okay.
And I was
okay.
like, nah, girl, right in the throat. Punch her right in the throat.
Oh, man, yeah, I missed that.
But George, let's talk about... I think she was great. I think she had a great
she's
balance
fantastic.
of her character. But the one that was make or break for me, and sometimes made it and sometimes broke it for me, was Mr. Charles Wallace.
Charles Wallace. Let's keep saying George. Why did I say George Wallace?
No, Charles Wallace.
He's fucking
played by
Alabama governor.
Derek Maccabee.
Hey man, I love Charles Wallace. Man.
That little kid is a baller. He really is a star. But he did a lot. Like, he was in the movie a lot. It was mainly his movie for a moment. At the end of the movie, I was just like, man, is this like...
Yeah, that's why I started to get lost. Like,
yeah.
At that point where he was like, when he turned to the
when
bad
he's like,
guy.
I'm evil. And I was just like, I don't know if I can handle this little kid being evil for like 30, 40 minutes. Like, for like 10 minutes, it's cute and funny and whatever. But like for 40 minutes, I was like, all right, let's get it.
That's why I got a little
let's
lost.
speed the shit up.
That's why I got a little lost in the sauce, eh? So in those scenes, I was like, oh man, what Mr. Charles Wallace doing here?
Yeah.
And then like that.
And then he turned into like Satan, or like It thing, It monster.
By the way,
Pennywise.
I was gonna say, like, shouldn't they have changed the name of It, considering it just?
I think it's from the book, so they can get away with it.
I didn't read the book
either.
Yeah. So, but then the book came out in 1962, right?
I have no idea.
Yeah, I think this book came out in 1962, which is weird. Don't you think Stephen King would have? Do you think Stephen King probably whipped that off from?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe. But then again, Stephen King is like, I could see him coming up with It or something like that, where he's just like, it's not she or he. It's
well, did you read It though? Like,
no,
because it's very from the whole like cosmic overlord.
It is, yeah. I've heard about that.
It's very much like similar.
Maybe, yeah. Maybe you're right. It might be right. Like dark energy, evil energy kind of thing coming to Earth kind of thing.
Yeah. Okay.
That's interesting.
I need a little help here though for the ending because
sure.
I was really like kind of lost.
Sure.
So Charles Wallace turns back into the normal little kid again, and then something happens. What happens? Like, I don't get. Then they back at home. Like, what happened? Like, I saw her go until like finally seeing the thing.
Well, the missus come.
Okay.
The missus show up.
Right.
Because she brought light into darkness.
Right, and then
and light is the only time that the missus can show up because they can't show up in darkness.
Tesseract. They tesseract there. Right.
They can tesseract only in light. So
right.
They can,
and enjoy or the main character brought the light.
Yeah. What's her name? Meg. So
yeah.
Meg brought the light by bringing love out of Charles Wallace and defeating the It monster.
Okay.
Pennywise.
Okay.
So they showed up and they were like, "You did it. You defeated the darkness, the evil.
Right.
Now you have brought light into the darkness. Now you can go home."
And then that was it.
Well,
like, but then what happened? Like,
that's what happened.
Like, but I don't get like what's the.
That's what I'm saying. It's not a great movie, bro.
Okay.
It's not great.
All right, that was my only real thing. And then they go back home. But then, like, how long were they gone?
How long were they gone?
Did they come back to the same time?
I to be honest, they were probably. I mean, okay, so Gugu comes out and she's like, "Hey, you've been outside?" So maybe like 5 minutes they were gone. I don't know, because she's like, "Oh, when'd you go outside, Charles Wallace?" Remember she says that. Where she's like, "Yeah, you just came back from."
Then why was Veronica still out there looking at him?
Because I think it literally they were gone for like 5 minutes. Or like something like that.
Well, can everybody else see like the weird fucking like tesseracting that was happening back there, or
maybe?
But nobody noticed if they were gone for that long.
I guess not. Maybe Veronica did, but she didn't say that.
Yeah, see, that's why
she's homegirl now.
All right,
she's got your back now, bruh.
Well, did she really? I mean, we see her problems, but like I don't know, I'm still not a Veronica fan here.
That's the movie, bro. I mean, that's
great film.
This is your Disney Channel original movie.
Great film though. I think not great. Good movie. I think. Definitely.
I think it's okay. I think it's a well-intentioned movie with a lot of faults, with faulty exposition, with bad dialogues, cheesy moments, and with good themes. I thought the themes were great. I thought the acting for the most part was great. I thought the little girl Storm Reed was great. I thought that random kid Calvin, whatever his name was, Calvin.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. I will say from like a aspiring editor / cinematographer, I will say this movie did have a lot of close-ups It did make me a little uncomfortable.
I like close-ups. What do you mean?
Well, it was like over usage of close-ups. I almost felt like.
That's probably green screen usage.
Well, it was the parts where we were like in like South Central, or like the big a lot of those close-up.
Oh, really?
Close-up. Oh. Yeah, like just from the beginning, like when we first meet the Clifton dude. What's his name?
Who? Calvin?
Calvin, I should say. Calvin. Yeah. I say Clifton. Like when we first meet him, it's in like an extreme close up of just his face, and like it hangs there for, or like when I don't know, like or Mindy Kaling.
The pacing and the character introductions in this movie are pretty bad. Think about it, Mrs. What's Up? What's her name? Mrs. What's Up? What's it?
Mrs. Witch or
no? Witsit. Reese Witherspoon's character.
Yeah. They're all W's, right?
What's it? Her name is Mrs. What's It.
Oh, well, okay. So there's a what, which, and who. Oh, I get it. And then Mindy Kaling plays the who because she quotes everybody.
So their introductions were pretty bad. I mean, when Reese Witherspoon showed up, that was kind of cringy. As far as like, hi. It's like, what are you doing in my house? Who are you? And it was just a weird interaction. Like that's not how you would interact with a crazy person in a puffy dress in your house. Mm-hmm. And then when the Mindy Kaling one was probably the worst, where it was just like, hey, I'm in your house. Oh, hey, what's up? And then she falls asleep. And I'm like, what is going on? And then Oprah comes out being 40 foot tall. I think that's just the character introductions. And now you mentioned Calvin. Calvin's character introduction was terrible. He's like, hey guys, what are you doing? Can I come with? Let's go. What's going on? Oh, I like that Charles Wallace kid. And I'm like, what's going on? Like, where'd you come from? Who are you? I don't know. I just felt like that's probably the pacing and the character introductions and the exposition is bad.
But I think there's a lot of good in this movie. Very spectacular.
I do think there's a lot of good in this movie. Visually, this is what they wanted to do. And I just felt like they wanted to make a visually stunning Disney Channel original movie, which isn't bad. It's just not my cup of soda.
Cup of soda.
I don't know. Cup of coffee.
Nice.
But those are my thoughts. Any other thoughts that you have before we peace?
Wrinkle in Time, man. Check it out if you're interested. If you're not interested, don't check it out. I definitely think
that's the best recommendation.
Well, no, I mean if you don't want to see it, I'm not gonna say see it because it's probably not a good idea. But if you want to see it, or if you're like remotely interested and curious,
see it to support Ava, man. Because after this podcast, hopefully you have a newfound appreciation for Ava DuVernay. Because I feel like great director, talented woman, passionate woman. And just a good person to have in the Hollywood industry. So those are our thoughts, guys, on Ava DuVernay. But make sure you let us know your thoughts. What is your favorite Ava film? What is your thoughts on A Wrinkle in Time? Did you enjoy it? Did you not like it? Did you think it was great? Did you think it was terrible? All opinions are valid in the comment section down below. Don't forget to leave us a comment and to leave us some likes and some peace signs and some love, because that's what we need in our lives, and that's what we need today in this country. All right, I am Ace.
This is RB3.
And we're peacing out from the Meaning of Podcast. Peace out, guys.